Welcome and thank you for joining us today for Enterprises Embrace AI-driven Wi-Fi to meet today's network demands. My name is Raleigh Gould and I will be moderating today's event. Our featured speaker is Shamus McGillicuddy, VP of Research covering network infrastructure and operations at EMA. Shamus has nearly 2 decades of experience in the IT industry. His research focuses on all aspects of managing enterprise networks, including network automation, AI ops-driven network operations, multi-cloud networking, and WAN transformation. And before I hand things over to Shamus, I wanted today's audience to know that Shamus will be concluding his event today by taking your questions. Feel free to log them anytime by using the Q&A functionality. Also, today's event is being recorded and you will receive a follow-up email from EMA that will include the on-demand playback as well as some additional resources. So I hope you'll check that email out. And now I'd like to go ahead and turn things over to our featured speaker, Shamus McGillicuddy. Shamus?
Thank you, Raleigh. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. As Raleigh mentioned, today's webinar is about some new research that I recently published titled Enterprises Embrace AI-Driven Wi-Fi to Meet Today's Network Demands. Before I go any further, I'd like to thank Extreme Networks, the sponsor of this research. This is independent research, which Extreme had no editorial insight into. They didn't get to review the report, and didn't get to comment on the report. I just wrote it and published it. They just get to put their name on it, and also they get to use the data that from the survey that I did. Thank you to Extreme Networks for making this project financially possible. My decision to conduct this research was partially driven by the fact that about 2022 or so, 2023, as people are coming back into the office after the pandemic's early shutdowns, I was starting to hear from network infrastructure and operations teams that the networks that they had in place in 2020 weren't really well suited for the workers that came back into the office in 2022 and 2023 for a variety of reasons. People were just working differently and expecting different, and wanted to use the Wi-Fi network differently. Maybe before they left, the Wi-Fi network was like was sort of like secondary to wired connections. With everyone tethered to their desk, they would usually plug in to an Ethernet port. Wi-Fi was sort of like a secondary option for guests or people that would go into like a conference room or something where they would mostly just be looking at want to be able to check their email while in a meeting, not really expecting to do much heavy lifting on the network while in that meeting. People came back in the office and wanted to use the network in very different ways. And so I wanted to explore that in depth. I also was aware of the fact that this sort of recognition that as people are coming back in the office, the industry itself is kind of in a transition point, to the extent that I think that the mismatch between what people need from their networks and what is currently commercially available is going to drive a wave of adoption of Wi-Fi 7. So on the left-hand side, this is data from the research I'm talking about right now. So I surveyed 151 people. I asked them, when is your organization going to initiate its next upgrade or refresh of its Wi-Fi network? And you see about 59%, a little over that, 59.2%, are going to do that within the next 12 months. And 96% will do it within the next 2 years. So that's a huge movement. And then when you ask them, where are you? Like what generation of Wi-Fi technology currently predominates your network? You see on the right, it's Wi-Fi 6. There wasn't a lot of Wi-Fi 6E adoption. Wi-Fi 6E is basically Wi-Fi 6 with the 6 gigahertz band available so that you have the three bands, 2.4, 5, and 6 gigahertz bands, which gives you a little bit more bandwidth, a little less latency. Wi-Fi 7, you see only 7.2% of people are there right now. So when you see that 96% of companies are expecting to make that jump to their next Wi-Fi network. That jump's mostly going to be about going from Wi-Fi 6 directly to Wi-Fi 7 uh, to get that ultimate, because it is obviously the newest standard. It's commercially available from all the leading network infrastructure vendors now, and it offers more bandwidth, lower latency. It makes better use of the 6 gigahertz band for that ultimate like high speed, low short range connectivity. Um, and so we're going to see this huge jump to Wi-Fi 7. Um, and so my research goals were to understand to provide some insight into like what's the best path towards this Wi-Fi 7 transition. Like like we really need to think about how user behavior is shaping Wi-Fi requirements. Because I really think that as people go from Wi-Fi 6 to Wi-Fi 7, given the dynamic, it's really going to be building for a new type of enterprise, a new type of network use case or use cases. So really thinking about how user behavior is going to shape Wi-Fi requirements, and then what do network teams need from their next solution? Like, what are they going to like? What drives their requirement? What kinds of requirements are driving their vendor solutions, vendor selection, and so forth? And what role does AI play in next generation Wi-Fi networks? Because I mean, just at this point, when I talk to network infrastructure and operations people, they are more open to and more ready to embrace AI capabilities to help them optimize and automate operations as much as possible, as much as they're comfortable with. Whereas like 4 or 5 years ago, when I was having conversations with people about AI, they were very skeptical. That skepticism is gone. Like I was talking to someone the other day a couple months ago, to be honestly, at a global manufacturer. It was a team of guys who were like architecting their next network observability solution. And I said, hey, do you want AI capabilities from this vendor that you're implementing? Or have implemented and now are like expanding. And they said, well, actually, we're training our own large language model internally that we want to integrate with it. So like there's a lot of forward thinking around AI right now, and how it can improve network operations. So I wanted to explore what kind of role AI will play in this transition to Wi-Fi 7 as well. And here's the methodology. As I mentioned, I surveyed 152 Wi-Fi experts and decision makers. So these people were directly engaged with Wi-Fi operations within their enterprise. And these are just their demographic information. So you see a third of them were IT engineers, architects, consultants. 29% were IT middle management, like managers, supervisors, directors, and 31% are executives. There are about 12, 13 different industries represented, but the top 7 are highlighted here. You see it's a lot of manufacturing, retail, financial services, and software and online services. Those are the big ones. We targeted enterprises, both mid-market and very large, and you see the IT groups here as well. Given the prevalence of IT executives and a lot of middle management, a lot of them working in what's described as an IT executive suite, but then you also see a lot of network engineering personnel, project management, IT architecture, some security, a little bit of representation from the NOC. So, user behavior and the future of Wi-Fi. We asked them, what kinds of user behavior are you seeing emerge or increase right now on your Wi-Fi network over the last 3 years? Like what has emerged or increased over the last 3 years on your Wi-Fi network? So 77% said they're seeing hybrid work patterns where people come in the office some days and then they're not in there other days. This leads to some complexity around how they manage like access policy because they have to sort of closely manage, remote access as well as on-premise access. It also means that usage of the physical space might change because these people are not coming in the office as much. They are possibly no longer going to have assigned desks. They might work from different places that were not expected in the past. Like maybe they're working in a conference room all day. And then 66% said we see a lot more use of real-time video and collaboration applications. These applications eat a lot of bandwidth, and also they are very sensitive to adverse network conditions. So if there's a lot of contention for Wi-Fi bandwidth, if there's a lot of interference of Wi-Fi bandwidth, and someone is having a video conference over that Wi-Fi network in the office, it can become an issue if that Wi-Fi network is not designed to deliver that application at a high level of experience, which I would argue a lot of the pre-pandemic Wi-Fi networks that are in place were not ready for. We're also seeing a lot of office mobility. So people come in the office, they're not tethered to their desks anymore because, as I mentioned, a lot of them don't have desks anymore or assigned desks. They might do a lot of work in a conference room. They might like meet with people in a cafeteria and work there. They might go into the lobby. They might gather around a staircase if you have a multi-level campus. They might work outside because they want to get a little sun. So that means you have to think about roaming and coverage in a different way. And then they're connecting, there's an increase in connections of personal devices. So instead of them coming in and connecting their laptop to the Wi-Fi network, they're trying to connect their iPhone or their Android phone, or they're connecting a wearable, an Apple Watch, maybe, smartwatch. Maybe they maybe they have some Wi-Fi connected shoes. Who knows? Because they want to really get a granular view of how many steps they do while they're wandering around in the office all day. So that means more devices, more concurrent connections, and then increased use of collaborative spaces, as I described, like they're using conference rooms more, and they're power users in their conference rooms now. They're not just not just checking their email. They might be downloading large files, might be sharing stuff on their screen, and that puts more pressure on the Wi-Fi network in places where you might not have had good coverage in the past because you were focused on providing coverage of the area around where the cubicles were, for instance. And then you see less prominent, 42% say there's a lot of unsanctioned application use, which is a security and compliance issue, but also a quality of service issue. You want to be able to make sure that the applications that are important on your Wi-Fi network get priority. So this new user behavior or intensified user behavior pushes new performance requirements and also pushes bandwidth demand and mobility requirements. Here we asked which of the following are driving changes and upgrades to your campus and office networks, particularly your Wi-Fi networks. And so it sort of is a translation of what we saw on the previous slide. 67% said we have performance requirements where we need to reduce latency and jitter and packet drops because we have all those real-time applications like video and desktop screen sharing and audio and whatnot that are really intense, that have very sensitive to adverse network conditions, impact productivity when they're not performing well because people just use these applications to get their job done more than they ever have in the past. Increased bandwidth consumption because of those real-time applications, but also they're using lots of other applications that are more bandwidth intensive than they may have been in the past. They might be pushing a lot of data into like, they might be uploading huge files into like an AI application so that it can analyze it. And that like suddenly means that there's a lot of large files going over your Wi-Fi network. That's just one example. And then user mobility. We've encountered increased user mobility. We're trying to optimize for it. We're trying to improve how we do roaming. We're trying to provide broader coverage. We can't just do a one-for-one replacement of all our access points as we go from Wi-Fi 6, Wi-Fi 7. It really has to be thought out much more carefully. We have to do a true redesign. And then half of them said connectivity for operational technology is shaping requirements too. So that could be smart building stuff, but it also could be industrial systems, medical imaging and testing equipment, and video surveillance. So a lot of those applications are critical systems that need highly resilient connectivity. They can't go offline. So you need to build a Wi-Fi network to support that. That might be a difference. In some cases, that might be outside your carpeted enterprises. In other cases, it might not. And then return to office policies are driving up office occupancy for almost 49% of them. So you think like 5 years ago, everyone went home. Uh, the offices were empty. The offices were optimized for the headcount that the company had at that time. And then uh, the return to office mandates happen. And your headcount is 10 or 15% higher than it was when those offices emptied out. I've know people who have told me that they went in the office after an RTO and they didn't have anywhere to sit. They didn't have anywhere to work. Their company was like, "Oh man, hey, let's put some desks in this wellness room. Uh, let's put some desks in this closet. Um, let's put some desks. Let's get rid of cubicles and we'll do an open office plan. That'll increase our desk a number of desks by 10% or 15%. But that headcount is now probably more dispersed than what your current coverage is, and but also could be more densely packed together. The people you might have a higher number of people trying to connect to an individual access point. So yeah, that's causing issues, which actually leads to the next part there, density requirements, users congregating. But that's not just about RTO. That's also about people just collaborating more. People are more likely to get away from their desk and like do face-to-face interaction. Um, you know, so they're going to congregate more and drive up density. And then you see end of life equipment is not the huge driver you would think. It's not end of life. That's like 41% say end of life of their current Wi-Fi network is an influence, but it's clearly not the influence that all these other things are. It's about performance, increased bandwidth, and user mobility. It's not about this just being an end of life cycle. So that's interesting. All right, so let's talk about requirements for Wi-Fi transformation. We asked them what shapes your vendor selection? When you're getting ready to do these Wi-Fi upgrades or refreshes, what's going to shape how you select a vendor for this? Because let's be honest, like when I talk to people about Wi-Fi vendor selection these days, they're not loyal to vendors right now. A lot of people are switching vendors right now. Part of it is driven by like an interest in lower cost. Part of it is driven by dissatisfaction with current vendor. Part of it is driven by an interest in like having a solution that fits better into a multi-vendor network management strategy. Maybe they have one vendor that's pushing them too hard towards like their own management tool or something, and they're like, well, I really need to have a vendor that plays nicely with third-party network management solutions, whatever the case. Like I am seeing a lot of people who are like, I'm ready to switch, and it's not just the infrastructure vendors either. Like my research shows that like no one is loyal to their management tools either. And there's like, I'm ready to, if someone can do something better, I'm gonna try it. So anyway, what's guiding their decision making? The number one thing is security capabilities. Um, that's pretty common when I'm asking about requirements. Like security is always top of mind for networking guys, despite the fact that, it's the cybersecurity team that gets all the credit for securing an enterprise. The network team is often responsible for rolling out a secure infrastructure, and so they think a lot about security. And in this case, like they're thinking about intrusion detection, like, oh, I want to be able to detect rogue devices and stuff. Do you have sensors in your access points? Or do I have to dedicate one of the radios that is supposed to be, providing connectivity to that detection, that sensor functionality or whatever. And then access control is a big one as well. Just being able to set and have flexible approach, but also a granular approach to how people access the network, especially if can it fit into like a zero trust network security architecture? Like I'm trying to segment my network more granularly from even at the access layer in my campus environments. So that's one big consideration. Number two is they want end-to-end solutions. So obviously wired and wireless, I think people are increasingly buying those together. They're not really looking to do one vendor for Wi-Fi and one for switching. I think those days are over at this point, thanks to the industry consolidation we've seen. I don't think there are any standalone Wi-Fi vendors anymore. So those are frequently bought together, but it's beyond that too. Like I talk to people who say they'd really like to be able to have the same vendor provide SD-WAN and routing as well. Maybe not always like firewalling. And the decision usually isn't tied to like data center switching or like data center network fabrics or whatever. But it definitely, like the enterprise network, they'd like to have a vendor that can provide an end-to-end solution. So that's of increased interest to them. And then you see number three, AI-driven network management and automation. So that AI-driven capability that I referenced at the beginning, like that is that is one of the top three considerations when they're thinking about a vendor. Very tertiary, competitive pricing and customer support. Those are not afterthoughts, but not as compelling as the other three to the left of the screen. And then you see radio frequency engineering innovation. That's really not a differentiator these days. It used to be, but it seems like customers at this point perceive that everyone's kind of operating on a level playing field, and the differentiation is in things like security and AI, and just having a full portfolio of solutions that you can deliver together. And then pre-existing vendor relationships is just not registering. As I said, I think vendor loyalty is very low right now, and this kind of validates that. So, we talked about how hybrid work is just everywhere. I think it was 77% of respondents to this research said that the they've seen increased hybrid work patterns that adds complexity around things like access control. So, you've had siloed technologies for secure remote access and for network access control on your local area networks. 100% of the people in this research told us that they would like a unified platform for on-premises network access control and secure remote access. People refer to it as unified access control. They on the vendor side, I'm talking about unified network access control, unified or universal zero trust network access, a solution that provides one platform for managing how you build and enforce access policies for people, regardless of where they are, whether they're at home, whether they're traveling, whether they're in your premises, your network, your physical network. They want to unify that. So that is something that I think you want to think about as you're modernizing your Wi-Fi network. Like what does that Wi-Fi vendor offer? Like, can they address this, or are you going to work with a third party, like maybe a secure access service, a secure access service edge vendor, SASE vendor, or an SSE vendor. They are increasingly offering this, but I think, well, I mean, a lot of the Wi-Fi vendors offer a SASE solution or of some kind at this point. But so yeah, you want to think about how you can consolidate and reduce complexity around this component of your architecture when you're refreshing your Wi-Fi network. On the right-hand side, you see their responses when we ask them what kinds of benefits they would perceive getting from a unified access solution. It's primarily about four things: reducing security risk, uh, improved collaboration between NetOps and SecOps, which is high priority in a lot of enterprises, including I'm seeing some enterprises are consolidating those groups into one group. Reduced management complexity. Already mentioned the word complexity a couple times on this slide, and increased architectural flexibility. Like you make changes to your network without having to like make a lot of do a lot of heavy lifting around how you do access policy. That's possible if like you've got a universal solution that isn't necessarily going to be disrupted if you, for instance, make major changes to your Wi-Fi network, like switching vendors, perhaps. And then you see secondary, but not far behind, improved user experience. Like now, suddenly, your people only have like one system that they use to get onto your network, regardless of where they are. Whereas in the past, maybe they had a VPN client when they're out of the office and some sort of authentication, some other kind of authentication gateway when they are in the office that maybe they don't always see. And then maybe if they're traveling and they're in a certain geography, like their their VPN client isn't working anymore, and they have to use some other kind of remote access tool. Now it's all consolidated in one solution. They're no longer being impacted from an experience perspective. And then you see at the bottom of the list, cost savings is not the big driver here. They're not looking to save money by consolidating two or more technologies into one. It's really about just operating better, reducing security risk, improving the way people work, reducing complexity. The cost savings is not the driver. And then another piece is this shift towards cloud managed networking. That's everywhere at this point. It's something you want to think about as you're switching up and making building a new Wi-Fi network. Like can we go in this direction? 75% of the people we surveyed said they want a tool. They want their Wi-Fi management tool in the cloud. 35% say they expect it to be pure SaaS, pure software as a service offering from the vendor. Another 40% want to be able to have a self-managed or self-deployed tool that in their public cloud environment. Some vendors are still not set up to do that smoothly. And then only 22% prefer an on-premise tool. So that number has shrunk consistently year to year over the last like 6 or 8 years. Like 6 or 7 years ago, when I asked this question about like how do you want to consume your network management tools, generally speaking, like those that were preferring on-prem were probably like triple that. It's gradually flipped. I think that the number of people who are going to prefer a pure SaaS solution are going to continue to grow as different vertical industries become more comfortable with the compliance and security considerations around consuming this as a SaaS solution. I mean, certain industries are still slow to do it, like aerospace and defense. But like, maybe like 3 or 4 years ago, financial services, like network engineering teams within the financial services sector would say, no way, it can't be in the cloud. It can't be a SaaS tool. I don't want my data leaving my 4 walls. More and more I hear from network engineers in that industry, like banks and so forth, that are now comfortable with SaaS as a tool consumption model. So what are the drivers of your deployment preferences? Well, 51% say security and compliance risk is a big thing, which is probably a barrier for a lot of them around consuming Wi-Fi management tool as a SaaS solution. Although On the flip side, I do talk to some people who think that SaaS is more secure, just because, well, you think about certain supply chain attacks on network management tools that have happened over the last half decade. That was partially a vector of attack because of all the on-premise installations of network management tools. So like a SaaS solution in theory could be more secure if that provider of that SaaS tool has done their due diligence around that. And I think a lot of people would be interested in saying, oh, well, you have SOC 2 compliance. What's your cybersecurity plan if you're ever hacked, things like that. So I think there's a mix of people who would, move in different directions depending on how security and compliance risk is interpreted in the organization. 32% said faster access to new features. That's definitely a driver of SaaS adoption because you don't have to actually upgrade the tool, which is disruptive. Like they're going to do that overnight, maybe without any interruption of service if they're a true multi-tenant cloud native SaaS offering. And one day you're just going to like open up the window and it's going to have like all these new features. Like, wow, that's cool. And then tool reliability and availability, like usually a SaaS solution is pretty resilient, but maybe you interpret this as, well, I think that I am the best qualified to deliver a resilient tool in my environment, so I want to keep it on-prem. It's open interpretation. Data sovereignty is another one that could push people away from SaaS unless that vendor has a data sovereignty story to tell around their SaaS offering. And then cost and licensing. I mean, that one, maybe you prefer perpetual licenses still, or maybe you're looking for subscription offerings. And then ease of use is the lowest one. Like I do talk to people who think that, for instance, cloud-based management tools are easier to use. I think that is a legacy of the fact that some vendors out there like abstracted CLI like didn't really give you access to much of an option to access command line interface on their hardware through their cloud managed tools. And so there's this perception of like, oh, CLI is gone. Like I can manage everything through a GUI. I don't think that's the case because like certain vendors out there have added to the number of products that you can manage through the cloud-based tools. They're also saying, hey, here's a window where you can like go direct to CLI. So I think that perception is misplaced. That there is an opportunity to get away from CLI with cloud managed tools, especially with Wi-Fi. But you're not really going to be managing just Wi-Fi through this stuff. Like chances are you can be managing when you have a cloud managed tool, you're also going to be managing switching and SD-WAN through it, maybe routing and firewalls as well, depending on who you're working with. So those are the drivers of deployment preferences. Now let's just pivot finally to the concept of AI-driven Wi-Fi management, since it is the number 3 pillar of like what people are looking for from their next Wi-Fi vendor. Did I just skip a slide? I did. Yeah, there we go. So interest in AI for networking is universal. We asked, is your organization interested in applying artificial intelligence to network management to drive efficiency and automation? Not just Wi-Fi, but network management in general. And you see that more than 99% said, yes, we either are doing this today or we'll do this in the future. Only 0.7% said, no, thanks. That number has definitely increased over the last few years. How comfortable are they with diving into AI really deep is open to interpretation. But what you're seeing here is at this point, AI, like most vendors have some kind of AI capability that they're offering. They're either like enhancing their existing solutions with AI capabilities, they're introducing new solutions with AI baked into every aspect of it, or they're offering like secondary products where, here's our traditional network management tool. Would you like AI? Here's a module or like a separate product that integrates with it. Just have to upgrade to an enterprise license agreement or whatever, premium licensing agreement to get it. But regardless, like I'd say like 8 out of 10 network management vendors and network infrastructure vendors these days has some kind of AI capability. So I'm not surprised that most of them are using it today or expect to use it in the future. we asked them like, hey, like how do you want to apply this to operations? Like, what are your top use cases for it? And you see, these are the top three out of, I don't know, like maybe like 8 or 9 options. They're really focused on improving how they troubleshoot networks, how they monitor fault and performance issues, and how they respond to security incidents. Um, the network team does respond to security incidents. Maybe they want some sort of detection and response capability in the tool, or maybe they just want to be able to provide answers to cybersecurity during an investigation, or provide data to cybersecurity during an investigation. Hey, can you send me the logs from these devices? Hey, what kinds of patterns are you seeing? Are you seeing any weird IPs? Whatever. So they want to be able to do that through AI. Like AI can optimize how they support that by saying, like, hey, AI tool, do you see any weird IP addresses on my network from any geographies of concern? Things like that. And then we asked them, what do you think are the most compelling potential benefits of applying AI to Wi-Fi management? And these are like top line business issues. 61% say improved user satisfaction. So the network experience is better for people. They're just happier. They're getting their work done. Like they feel productive. It's because of the efficiencies driven into operations by AI. And efficiency, speaking of efficiency, 59-ish% of people said they're going to have operational efficiency. They're going to get more done with less, because most of the time when I talk to network engineering teams, network operations teams about personnel, there's a lot of attrition and no hiring of to fill empty seats these days. CIOs are telling their individual teams to do more with less. So AI can drive operational efficiency. It can really sort of forestall the pain of having a shortage of skilled personnel. 55% say it can reduce security risk, because, as we mentioned, like security incident response is a top use case for AI, but also like improvements around how you just manage your network. You might start reducing manual errors that might open up vulnerabilities through inconsistent management practices. It's just one example. And speaking of skills gaps and like hiring freezes, 51% of people said, well, we think we actually are going to address these skills and personnel gaps. Might not be a shortage of like heads, it might be a shortage of high skilled personnel, for instance. Like AI can drive more impact, can increase the positive impact of lower skilled personnel if like AI is sort of assisting them in doing and tackling tasks that may have been too complex or difficult for them to do on their own in the past. And then finally, cost optimization is an opportunity for quite a few people in the survey. So key takeaways. There's a wave of Wi-Fi adoption approaching. 59% of people are going to initiate upgrades within the next 12 months, 96% within the next 24 months. And very clearly, most of the market is on Wi-Fi 6 right now. So it's going to be a jump from Wi-Fi 6 over Wi-Fi 6E to Wi-Fi 7. Those Wi-Fi upgrades are being driven by changes in user behavior that are being translated into higher performance requirements, exploding bandwidth demand, and increased user mobility. So you need to, the network that you are replacing will look a lot different from the network that you build. That's unquestioned. And your peers are looking for vendors who can provide security capabilities, including universal network access. They're looking for end-to-end solutions that can cover wired, wireless, and more, like SD-WAN and routing. And they're looking for AI-driven network management, preferably delivered via cloud-based tools. Whether it's a pure SaaS solution or a self-managed solution deployed in a VPC in the public cloud, for instance. So that's all I had for the session. Now I'm going to turn it over to Raleigh to steer Q&A.
Thanks, Shamus. Let's dive into the questions. The first one is, one slide said location-based services are driving network upgrades in 40% of companies. What kind of services?
Um, the two big ones that we saw, one was asset management and tracking. So that might refer to using Wi-Fi to track where like medical equipment is in a hospital, or where like physical equipment like forklifts and robots and other equipment might be located in a warehouse. Um, or maybe Wi-Fi connected devices in a carpeted enterprise. Like, oh, where is that that mobile video conferencing gear that we move from one room to another, or whatever. Who knows? Um, and then the number two use case we saw was workplace optimization. So when you think about how this hybrid work patterns have changed things around, like, oh, I don't have a assigned desk. It would be great if like there's a location-based service that could tell me what desks are available based on like who is there any Wi-Fi connected devices in at that desk right now? Oh, we can interpret that as it being empty. Let's check, like maybe you got like a hot desk um, application as well that that's combining like reservations with availability. Um, so that's an example. Another workplace optimization tool might be, location-based tracking of whether or not a conference room is actually available, like because people might not have reserved that conference room, but someone might be squatting in it because they saw it was empty. So you can use location-based services to confirm that it's empty and then reserve it. Those are a couple examples of what we were seeing.
Thanks, Shamus. What kinds of AI-driven network management features should we expect from Wi-Fi vendors today?
So I think that at this point, a lot of them have tackled low-hanging fruit, like machine learning-based stuff that does anomaly detection and event correlation. So you should be looking at vendors who are talking about things like agentic AI, agentic operations, uh, like broad spectrum root cause analysis, automated and guided remediation, predictive capacity management, predictive problem prevention. Um, Leveraging conversational AI capabilities to drive uh, like like virtual assistants that can, provide like human readable explanations of what's happening and giving you the opportunity to make a decision on how you want to use the insights, like, oh, here is our hypotheses for why something is happening. Here are some steps on how you can fix the issue. Here's what you can do to find out more information if you want to dig deeper. Like, those are what you should be looking for at this point, not just like, oh, we detected an anomaly. Here's the relevant data that you should look at. That's pretty table stakes now. It's really about being able to do like more reasoning around the patterns that have been detected. I think that if you can find vendors that can do that, that'll be really helpful.
Good insights. Thank you, Shamus. Let's take one more question. Aside from upgrading my Ethernet switches for multi-gigabit, will Wi-Fi 7 drive requirements to upgrade any other infrastructure?
Yeah, I mean, whenever you add bandwidth to a network, it gets filled up. So uh, by apps and data. So that's going to trickle out to the WAN circuits. I've talked to people who said that they've had to upgrade their WAN circuits as well as their Wi-Fi networks, which in turn may trigger the need to upgrade your SD-WAN gateways or edge appliances or whatever, just so that you have the hardware at the edge of on that WAN circuit that's rated for the bandwidth upgrade. One of the big ones we saw though was network security. They don't want their firewalls to bottleneck these networks now that there's a ton more bandwidth at the edge. There's a lot of a lot of the people in the survey said that they anticipated making upgrades to their firewalls, for instance, to be able to handle more traffic.
Great. Thank you, Shamus, for taking those questions. And I wanted to thank today's audience for joining us. You can learn more about the report by visiting enterprisemanagement.com, or you can check out Extreme Networks website, where you should be able to access the report for free. As I mentioned, you will also be receiving a follow-up email from EMA with the on-demand playback and some additional resources. So please check that email out. Thank you again for joining us, and I hope to see you at a future EMA research webinar.